All right, welcome to another Fabric Tip Friday. What we're going to talk about today is when you have a wing or something where it's got a solid sheeted area of wood that the fabric needs to go down to. I don't know why people are constantly having problems with this, but in our system, if you have fabric stretched over wood, aluminum, anything, and you don't glue it down, when you spray primer over that, it's going to wick through and go to the bottom and cause tremendous amount of pinholes. You always have to put a coat of glue on something. People will say, well, I've started using your system and I don't understand why it's doing that. I didn't have that problem with polyfiber or whatever. Well, with polyfiber, you're painting a pink brushed on coat over everything and sealing it. So you have to seal it. So with our system, what it's best to do is like a leading edge or whatever, you have to put a base of glue down, and then when you stretch it around, you wet it through and just go ahead and glue it down. This will be in a situation like with a Waco or stagger wing or anything that's got wood. You want your wood prepped, sanded smooth and everything. And a lot of times, instead of doing some kind of a varnish or epoxy varnish that could be something that is real shiny or slick that causes our glue not to want to adhere to it, in the past, a lot of the customers has just embedded in brand new wood our UA55 glue at thin down rate, like a 1-part glue to 2-part reducer. But what you want to do is lay down a coat of thick glue, like a 1-part glue to 2-part reducer. When that dries, I like to lay another one down, and sometimes in between you'll have a little bit of a rough texture where the glue has pulled up and kind of a rough. Just run a little sandpaper to get it smooth again, and then another coat of glue. Even 3 coats is not going to hurt anything. Have your bed of glue down, and then putting the fabric on. A lot of times people will put it around the perimeter of the wing and everything, and then pre-shrink everything and have it pulled down on it. That is normally the way I like to do things, because if you have an open bay right here, you've done shrinked it, or you might, after you glue everything down, do the final shrinking on the open bays. On a couple videos, I saw a gentleman with the Stewart system that was doing double cover, and he didn't pre-shrink the second coat. And I was always worried about getting, have a pucker somewhere. But on this piece, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to do what he did, and it does work where you're just working out from the center. Because if I glued this around the side and then tried to pre-shrink it, my wood could actually bow up and I could create an open area, an oil can area that I could never get it to stick down to. So the key with putting this down is you don't want to have any voids. Because what you'll do is when you're gluing this down, if you don't rub it in and really get a good rub in on it, you can have these little opaque or little white spots, which basically is not glued down. Like I tell people all the time with fabric, when you're going to be gluing down to something, if they have messed around and got glue on something, they filled the weave, then they let that dry, that weave is filled with glue and you can never get glue to go on through it. So you have to move pretty quickly, and if you have a little area, you have to really rub it out. I've had situations where I took a piece of like a foam, it goes under a pad, under a floor maintainer, where you've got a sanding pad, that real coarse, looks like foam rubber, but it doesn't hurt glue or anything. I've actually used that in my hand when I'm wetting it through. What I'm going to use is just a rag folded over. You'll want to have a glove or something, and using this to rub it in. What I've got is glue mixed, 1-part glue, about 4 parts reducer, so it's thin enough to go through. You will have people that will want to just use the glue reducer or acetone, and it looks really pretty, and boy, it embeds it down and everything. But when that glue dries out, all you did was take reducer through the fabric and kind of activated the glue under it to one side of the fabric, and then it all dries out, so you're just kind of stuck on. You're not encapsulated with any glue. I like to take some glue through that side, and the process is using thin glue to wet it through, and then you want another brushed coat or rolled on coat or whatever of thin glue. What that does is final fills that weave so that when you prime it, you don't have pinholes and stuff. I get people call all the time that I know that I told them Make sure you put the number of coats on your tapes or whatever, and they'll say they got pinholes, and they'll admittedly say, well, you told me to not do that, but I did it. Now I got pinholes, and can you help me fix this problem? You've got to put the glue over the top. What I'm going to do in this little part here, I've got one of these little foam or kind of a fuzzy rollers. It doesn't really come apart with the glue, and I've got this 1 part glue in here. And what I'm going to do is start wetting this in the center. And you can see it's fully changing color right there. It's doing really well. It's filling out. But what will happen is the perimeter of this is partially wet and partially glued. When that dries, that's going to be a spot that can cause a white spot that it's not down. Now, I've really got a lot of glue here. I'm kind of pushing it around out to the sides. But your key here, and I'll probably have a little white spot here in just a little bit. You can't go all directions. I mean, you have to have a stopping point at some point to where you can only go one direction on the wing. A lot of times when you stretch the fabric, you could have a slight concave in your wing, and that fabric will stretch across that concave, and you can't get, when you've stretched it, you can't get the fabric to go down in that concave. I've even had times that I had to take a razor and cut that concave so it would lay in and put maybe a piece of tape on it. But I'm just kind of going all directions, working my way out, and see, that's just air bubbles there. Those are still wet and they'll push out. Let me get across here. And like I said, I'm putting quite a bit, but it's really thin down glue. I'll roll it out to the edge here. So it's been a little while since I was over here, and it's kind of dried. So when I go across this, as you can see, there's a couple little places where it was dried. So I dip a little bit of that in there. And I mean, I get aggressive. Anytime I see a little spot, and this one, it's going to make a liar out of me. This one surprisingly has wetted down really good. Maybe I'll do a spot here and just don't put quite as much glue. I want to get one of those light colored spots. Now that's a wrinkle. So that one I just have to work out later. I probably couldn't have asked for it to do any better than this, so it's going to try to make me a liar, but I do see a couple light spots right here. And what those will do, I don't know for sure how much of that is glued down, but with the new urethane paints and stuff, what happens is we prime this over, we sand it, we seal this thing up with paint, and the old dopes and everything was more so, they were a little bit permeable to air and what have you. These things seal up to the point that if this is a dark colored plane and it sits out in the sun and it gets up to about 180, 190, the wood can gas off. Parts of these glues get a little bit limber as far as with heat, and that's the plus side of our system, or say the Stewart system or Superflight system, to where you can take an iron and kind of activate the glue and put it down. With that same process of you being able to activate that glue down means that you can kind of soften that glue. So when you got 185 degrees and you got wood trying to gas off, and you've got that glue getting a little bit soft under that heat, it has still got the full 100 pound per square inch pull to the side. It is not reducing any of the strength of the glue, but it can create a gas and actually create a little gas bubble. Once that is kind of dry, you come in and you want to work all of those spots out. With all that said, I had one customer and he said that they had good luck. Some of the wood wings, actually, they'll just glass in fiberglass or use like a West Coast epoxy system or whatever, if it's a solid wood wing that has no open areas. But what he does is takes the 1.8 ounce, the lightweight fabric, lays it on all the wood like this, 2 or 3 coats of thick, puts the lightweight because it really embeds down good, and he'll just take a razor whenever it comes to an open bay or whatever, and he cuts all that out, and he just puts a layer of the lightweight fabric on everything. Then he puts 2 coats of thick glue on top of that, and then puts his 2.8 ounce or whatever he's using and stretches it and puts it down. And that just is an extra little layer, kind of a laminated layer for if any bubble tried to move, it's trying to bubble up 2 layers. And that really works well on a lot of the antique planes, especially when the wood is not that great shape or whatever. And it's not like putting a piece of felt down. That doesn't work with AirTech because you're still going to have to put glue over that open, dry fabric over the felt. And usually you have to have an envelope to make that work. But they will put that 1.8 ounce down on everything just as this layer, then they'll lay glue on it. And this is just an extra place to remind everybody when you're doing a leading edge and you've glued it down, when you put your second layer over, if you're double leading edges, you have to put more glue on that second layer. They keep forgetting that and they don't have enough glue. That's just the way we lay the glue down, but the key is to have all the white voids out. Right there's one, but I can feel a little, I didn't have these things sanded good. I can feel a little peck of sawdust or something on that. These are just pieces of Luan that I'm doing tests on and different things because we have a new top coat and just doing different tests and everything. And a lot of times I'll do different numbers of coats underneath and different numbers of coats of glue on top. I put these under heat lamps at 220 degrees for like 3 hours and just doing a lot of tests like that I do here so that I know what works and what doesn't. But that's it for today. Thanks.